Cameron's hands were shaking when he gave me the drive. Not from fear, at least not the kind you show, but from something deeper. Something you feel only when your brain and your instincts violently disagree. He said just one thing before, slipping it into my palm. Play it alone, don't stop once it starts. That was 6 hours ago. Now I'm sitting here with the screen glowing in the dark, audio already cued, volume locked. I don't know what you're about to see. I only know it's real because I watched it once already, and my hands haven't stopped sweating since. What you're about to witness wasn't recorded for a briefing or some mission log. This wasn't archived by any government, no timestamp, no classification. This was smuggled out of somewhere no one talks about, because no one's supposed to come back from it. You've heard stories about impossible things, whispers about projects off the books, operations scrubbed from existence, missions that never officially deployed. But this isn't that, this isn't war. This is what happens when we cross a line we don't understand, and something responds. It started outside Elko, Nevada, deep in the desert where radio silence isn't a protocol, it's survival. Our team was small, Cameron, Reese, myself, and 2 others. Guys trained to kill without questions, to disappear without names. We were sent to intercept a single unidentified figure moving against the wind. No gear, no weapons, just walking. Straight toward a live perimeter like he didn't know or didn't care that death was on the other side. We followed engagement protocols. We issued commands. He didn't stop, not once. So we did what we were trained to do. Cameron fired the first shot, 2 in the chest. The man staggered, looked down like someone checking a loose button, and then he laughed. Not a cackle, not rage. A quiet, personal laugh. The kind you make when something finally makes sense. Then he kept walking. That's when everything turned wrong. Reese's comm cracked with static. Only it wasn't static, it was a voice. One we all recognized. I swear to you, it was his father's voice, dead 13 years, saying a sentence no one else could hear but him. Reese dropped his rifle. He said, "I just saw my front porch." Like he wasn't in the desert anymore. Then he vanished. Not ran, not abducted, just gone. Like he stepped sideways into air and didn't come back. We tried to radio base. Nothing. Sky clear, signals dead. Then the figure looked at me. Just looked. And for a second, just a second, I was somewhere else. I was 6 years old, in my mother's kitchen. She was baking bread. And then it was gone. Like the memory had been hijacked and returned, bruised and wet. That's when I knew this wasn't a man. I wish I could tell you more. But the drive ends. There. Cuts off mid-frame. One last image, the figure standing over Reese's rifle, smiling. Not with cruelty, but with recognition. Like he'd been through this exact moment before. Hundreds of times. And I haven't told you the worst part yet. Because when I paused the footage earlier, just for a second, I swear I heard something whisper. My name. But no one's ever called me that outside my own head. Cameron hasn't answered his phone since. His apartment's empty, cleared out like no one ever lived there. But he left one thing behind, a torn scrap of paper with 5 words written in red ink, circled again. And again, we shot a human, he laughed. And tomorrow night, I go back out there. I didn't sleep the night after I watched the footage again. Not because I couldn't, but because I was afraid I'd wake up in a place I didn't recognize. There's this feeling you get when something cracks inside your perception, like the world's off by just 1 decimal point, and everything looks the same, but feels wrong. I couldn't shake it. My apartment, same creaking floorboard near the fridge, same buzzing light in the hallway, but somehow it didn't smell right. It smelled too clean, like the room had been reset, sanitized, repopulated with furniture that looked almost like mine. That's when I checked my phone. The last message from Cameron was gone, not deleted. Missing. No trace of the call, no timestamp, no record I'd ever spoken to him after the mission. You ever feel like you've been rewritten, I thought? Maybe I'd imagined it. Trauma does things. Soldiers tell stories all the time, flashbacks, hallucinations, whatever the hell the VA doesn't want on paper. But then I found something that hadn't been there before. Taped to the bottom of my kitchen drawer was a tiny recorder. No label, just one file on it. It clicked on the second I picked it up, like it knew. Like someone wanted me to hear what was on it. First 2 seconds, silence. Then a distorted, rusted voice breathing low against static. "This isn't the first version of you." I dropped the recorder, backed away like it was loaded, and then I heard it. A faint echo, not from the device, but from behind the wall. Same voice, delayed by half a beat, like it was watching me react. I didn't check the wall, I didn't move. I just stood there, eyes locked on nothing, because every part of me suddenly believed I wasn't alone. That's when the second character came in. His name was Blake, and he said we served together. I don't remember him, not even a shred. But he knew things, deep, buried details. What song my mother used to hum when she cleaned the kitchen. What scar Cameron had on his left shin from a burn when we were 10. Things I never told anyone. Blake showed up like he had every right to be there, sipping from a gas station coffee cup and tossing his jacket over my chair like this was just another Tuesday. I asked him how he got in. He said the door was open. It wasn't. Blake talked, like someone who didn't blink anymore. Every sentence had a pause, like he was checking it against a script. He kept saying things like, "You've seen it before, even if you don't know you have." I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer, just played something from his phone, audio, badly recorded. It sounded like me, talking in a flat, emotionless voice about a place called Site 39. But I never said those things. I never went to any Site 39. And yet there I was, on his screen, describing things I couldn't possibly know. He leaned in, whispered like he was confessing. "The footage doesn't show what happened. It shows what you were supposed to believe happened. That's what they do. They don't erase memories. They bury them in new ones." I laughed, out loud, because it was absurd. But Blake didn't smile, he just stared at me and said, "Tell me what year it is." I answered, simple, direct. Then he asked, "Okay, now, what's the last movie you saw in theaters?" And I blanked. Not like I forgot, like it had never happened. Like that part of my life had been lifted out and replaced with silence. That night I checked the footage again. The man, the one we shot, his face glitches for a single frame. I paused it, zoomed in, frame by frame, second by second. Right before he laughs, the image twitches, and underneath his face there's another. Mine only for one frame, one breath, then gone. I didn't tell Blake. Next day I tried reaching Reese's mother, just to see if anything lined up. Her voice trembled when I said my name. "He used to talk about you," she said, "before the dream started. Said you weren't who you said you were." I asked what she meant. She hung up. Blake didn't leave after that. He stayed in my apartment like it was his safe house. Said, "We had to sync timelines before the reset started again." I thought he was losing it. Maybe we both were. But he showed me something else, hidden under his skin, just below his collarbone, a small raised shape. I thought it was a scar until he pressed it, and his eyes rolled back just for a second, like a computer restarting. When he came back, he was different, calm, focused, terrifying. "They call us anomalies," he said, voice lower than before, "because we remember between resets." That night I heard my own voice again, not in the apartment, in my dreams, speaking backwards, fast, frantic. I recorded myself sleeping. 8 hours of silence except at 3:17 a.m., when I sat up, stared at the camera and said, "You were never deployed. You were never even born." I watched it 100 times. My eyes, they weren't mine. Blake said it would get worse. Said memories would peel like paint. You'll start hearing things in white noise, seeing names you don't recognize on your own mail. The trick is not to trust the parts of yourself that feel familiar. That's how they trap you. By then my walls were covered in notes, threads of names, places, dates I wasn't sure were mine. I kept seeing the number 49 scrawled in red pen across my mirrors, my phone screen when it was off, even once in condensation on the bathroom window. I didn't write it. I don't think I did. I started hearing footsteps in the apartment above mine, but the building's only 3 floors. I live on the top. The footsteps always stop at 3:17 a.m., right above where my bed is. Last night, Blake disappeared, left his coffee, his jacket, his phone, but no sign of him leaving. No footage from my building's hallway. I checked every camera. All I found was a single frame from the elevator feed. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the door opens. No one inside, but the lights flicker, and the word, "retry," flashes on the screen. Don't know who I am anymore, but the worst part, the part that really keeps me awake, isn't the memories that don't fit. It's the ones that do. Memories that feel too perfect, too cinematic, like they were planted to keep me calm. What they don't want you to remember isn't some buried trauma. It's that none of this is real. And somewhere out in that desert, something is still walking, still watching, still laughing. Because the footage wasn't a warning. It was a test, and I think I passed. There was a moment, brief, fragile, when I believed I had found the truth. It wasn't a grand revelation, no cinematic unveiling or heroic breakthrough. Instead, it came like a whisper in the back of a restless mind, a memory folding over itself, smoothing out the wrinkles just enough to let me breathe again. Blake's disappearance, the endless loops of fractured timelines, the ghostly laughter echoing through the desert. It all began to make sense, or at least as much sense as it ever could. I found a name. Something I hadn't seen before, buried. In the static of that ruined footage, hidden in the corners of corrupted files, a code scratched into the margins of Cameron's discarded notes. Project Lumen. A project no one ever wanted me to find. It promised a resolution, a fix for the anomalies, those of us caught in the spaces between what's real and what isn't. I was going to put the pieces back together, to reclaim my life, my memories, my sanity. The truth felt close, almost tender, like the fragile pulse of something long lost but waiting to be found. I traced it to a facility just outside Reno. A faded, rusting sign warned visitors away, but I had no choice. The weight of not knowing was crushing me, and every instinct screamed that this place held answers. The building was abandoned, but the air thrummed with electricity, like the walls themselves were alive with secrets. Inside, I found dusty terminals blinking with unreadable codes and faded photographs of people who looked like us. Soldiers, operatives, some with eyes that seemed too bright, too knowing. Then I found the logs, hours of footage, transcripts, experiments, all cataloged under Project Lumen. It described an attempt to erase memories, to rewrite history, to turn people into perfect weapons or disappear them altogether. The anomalies, people like me, like Reese, like Blake, were glitches, errors in the system. That's what they called us. Glitches. I watched one recording over and over, a man mid-30s standing in a barren room, eyes empty yet defiant. He spoke a name that shook something loose in me, Oliver. The same name whispered in my dreams, the one that Cameron's father said before he vanished. The man in the recording described his reset, the moment his identity was scrubbed away, replaced with a new version crafted by unseen hands. He pleaded for remembrance, for someone to know he existed beyond the lies. His voice cracked, raw with desperation. I felt like I was staring at a mirror, fragments of my own broken reflection staring back. If this was the answer, then maybe the madness was ending. Maybe I could find Oliver, find Reese, find Cameron, find myself. But then I found the file, labeled A, the incident. It was an old recording, grainy and distorted, but the sound cut through like a knife. A crowd of children laughing and playing, their voices weaving through the static. Then a gunshot, sharp, sudden, silence. Then a scream, long and broken. The footage shifted, focusing on a small boy no older than 6, standing alone in the empty playground. His eyes weren't empty. They were too deep, too knowing. He whispered something just barely audible, A name that wasn't Oliver or Cameron or Reese. A name I recognized but couldn't place. And then he vanished. Not like Reese or Cameron, but like the air folded over itself and swallowed him whole. The laughter returned, warped and twisted, as if coming from somewhere inside my own head. That day felt like a lifetime ago, or maybe it never ended. I sat there, heart pounding, the line between past and present blurring into a haze of unease. The incident wasn't just history, it was a warning, a pattern, the same invisible force watching, waiting, weaving itself into every memory I tried to hold on to. The more I searched, the less I knew. Every truth uncovered only peeled back another layer of doubt, another shadow lurking just out of sight. I realized then that the danger wasn't just external, it was inside me, tangled. In my thoughts, my fears, my very identity. It watched from the beginning, patient and silent, feeding on the fractures in my mind. And then, as I left the facility, a chill crawled down my spine. On the back of my hand, carved faintly into my skin, was a number. 49. Not written, in ink or etched with a blade. It was like a memory imprint, a scar from a life I couldn't fully remember. That number, the same one Blake warned me about, the one I'd seen in reflections, in shadows, in the static between signals. It was a reminder, a brand, a countdown. The story wasn't over. It had barely begun. When I returned home, the footage from the mission wasn't the same. The laughter was gone, replaced by silence so heavy it pressed against my chest like water. The man's face flickered again, but this time it wasn't mine. It was someone else entirely, someone I recognized but had no right to know. A face I'd seen in a dream, in a nightmare, on a grainy photograph from my childhood that I'd buried deep in a box labeled, "Do Not Open." The files, the memories, the faces, they all demanded one thing, that I question everything. That I rewatch the entire story, not as a witness but as a participant trapped in a game where the rules kept changing, and the prize was my own sense of reality. They told me I'm not crazy. But the truth, the hidden truth, they lied. And whatever watches from the edges of my mind, patient, unseen, unstoppable, is waiting for me to forget that too. I used to think I was alone in this, that the fractures in memory, the glitches in the footage, the whispers of a past rewritten, all of it was just my personal nightmare, a singular thread unraveling in the void. But the truth crept in like cold fog through cracked windows. I'm not the only one. There are others, people scattered across the country, maybe even around the world, whose lives have become tangled in the same distorted weave, whose minds have been quietly pulled under the surface of what we call reality. And until recently, none of us dared speak out loud, because to speak was to risk losing the fragile thread of sanity we cling to. It started with the messages, cryptic, fragmented, like whispers caught in static. They came through channels I never expected. An email in my spam folder with nothing but a string of numbers. A text from an unknown number with a symbol I didn't recognize, something resembling an Ouroboros, half burned and half frozen, flickering like a dying star. And then, in the dead hours when sleep fled me, shared dreams. I would find myself standing in a vast, featureless white room, walls pulsing with a dull light, accompanied by a dozen faceless figures who knew my name without being told. We shared memories that weren't ours, fragments of lives we never lived, faces we never may. The dreams always ended the same way, with a warning carved into the air, a phrase floating just out of reach until I forced my eyes open. You were right all along. The most disturbing part? These symbols and messages didn't come randomly. They appeared in places that should have been familiar, but felt corrupted. An old paperback from a forgotten shelf, pages marked with the same Ouroboros. A glitch in the static of a 20-year-old found footage video, uploaded by a user long since disappeared, where a shadow in the background twisted into the shape of that same symbol. A grainy photograph taken decades ago but showing a figure, with eyes too wide, too knowing, watching the camera with a smile that didn't belong to any living person. What the government never released, what was erased from archives, whispered through these fragments like a ghost story passed between those who know too much and those who know too little. I started piecing together a network, loose and unspoken, connected by more than coincidence. Forums buried deep in the web, groups speaking in code, exchanging fragments of what they called the hidden truth. None of them knew the whole story. No one ever does. But they all sensed the same oppressive weight, the same unseen eyes watching their every move. People would send me pictures of symbols carved into trees near their homes, or screenshots of intercepted radio frequencies filled with low humming and whispered names, always ending in a countdown that matched the number 49. I realized then that the number wasn't just a marker, it was a countdown to something, or a marker of how many had already slipped through the cracks. Amid all this, a third perspective emerged, someone, or something, watching us with an unsettling clarity, sometimes communicating through the spaces between messages, through glitches in live streams or flickers on security cameras. This observer called themselves the Archivist. Not quite human, not quite machine, but a voice threaded with exhaustion and something almost like hope. Their warnings were subtle but chilling. Do not trust the surface, they said. Your memories are the battleground, and you are the prize. They claimed to have witnessed every iteration, every reset, every forgotten truth. They were the only one speaking without fear, the only one who seemed to understand the machinery of control that binds us all. Identity, memory, control, these are no longer abstract concepts but chains wrapped tightly around my mind. The questions gnaw at me relentlessly. If the past can be rewritten, if memories can be implanted or erased, then who am I beneath the layers of borrowed time and borrowed lives? Is the person looking back from the mirror really me, or just a ghost of the version they want me to be? The dread of not knowing whether my thoughts are my own, or echoes fed to me from an unfathomable source grows heavier every day, and as I type this now, the room feels colder, the shadows longer, as if the unseen force watching has leaned closer, waiting for me to slip. There's no clear path forward, only more questions and fractured clues scattered across the dark corners of a reality that is less solid than I ever dared imagine. The truth remains just beyond reach, a whisper beneath layers of silence and manipulation, a warning woven into the very fabric of our memories and fears. And now, knowing that others are out there, watching, waiting, unraveling, makes the whole thing feel less like a nightmare and more like a shared secret, one we were never meant to uncover, but now can't unsee. So I keep searching, keep listening to the fragments, hoping the next message, the next symbol, the next dream will bring clarity. But part of me knows the story isn't about answers. It's about survival. Because whatever this force is, whatever watches from the edges of consciousness, it's patient, relentless, and it's been here all along. And as you watch this unfold, remember, you're not alone. You were right all along. There comes a moment, in every unraveling, when the question shifts from what happened to why did it happen. It's no longer the mechanics of erasure, the shadows in corrupted footage, or the whispered names in a silent room. It's the weight of meaning, the unbearable ache beneath the surface of every fractured memory. I remember standing alone in the ruins of the facility, the cold seeping into my bones, the air thick with dust and forgotten promises. It was there, in that empty space where reality cracked, that the terrifying clarity struck me. This was never about control or conquest. It was about fear, our fear of the chaos we carry inside, the chaos we pretend not to see in ourselves and in each other. Why destroy a person's memories? Because the past, no matter how broken or beautiful, holds us hostage to who we are and who we might become. The project, the resets, the faceless observers, they weren't just erasing history, they were erasing humanity, trying to smooth out the ragged edges. to erase the raw, unpolished moments that make us human. But in doing so, they didn't create perfection. They created ghosts. I saw it in Blake's laughter when we shot him, in Reese's disappearing. Act in Cameron's whispered names. These were echoes of a defiance that no erasure could kill. A reminder that beneath the layers of programming, beneath the shattered memories, there is something fiercely, stubbornly alive. The truth is cruel and beautiful in the same breath. I carry it now, heavy and fragile, like a confession whispered, to a night that never answers back. Because I know what they never told me, that this fractured reality, these glitches and anomalies, are the scars of a soul fighting to remember itself in a world desperate to forget. And in that fight, there's pain I can't undo. Faces lost, moments stolen, fragments of love and terror stitched into the fabric of my being. To accept this truth is to open a wound that will never fully heal. To reject it is to drown in the silence of oblivion. I stand at the edge, feeling the weight of choice pressing down on me. Do I embrace the chaos within and risk everything? My sanity, my identity, even my life? Or do I let the quiet force erase me, become just another forgotten shadow in a system designed to silence the unruly heartbeat of humanity? It's a question that no one else can answer, because it's mine alone. And maybe, just maybe, it's a question you carry too, whether you see it or not. Because what I've uncovered isn't just my story. It's a mirror reflecting the fragile, painful beauty of what it means to be human. Our memories, our fears, our endless defiance in the face of erasure, these are the things that define us, even when we try to hide. In this moment of unbearable clarity, I let the tears fall, not just for myself, but for all of us lost in the folds of a reality that keeps shifting beneath our feet. The ghosts I chase are not just in the past. They live in the choices we make every day, in the stories we tell ourselves and the ones we bury deep. And maybe that's the cruelest truth of all, that the fight to remember is also the fight to forgive. To forgive what we cannot change, to hold on to the fragments of love and pain, and to keep moving forward even when the path is obscured by shadow. This isn't an ending. It's a beginning. An awakening that will haunt me long after the screen goes dark. Because once you see the cracks, once you hear the echoes beneath the silence, there's no going back to the way things were. We are all part of this story now, tangled in its mystery, its fear, and its fragile hope. And in that tangled web, we find something unexpected, a reason to keep searching, to keep questioning, to keep fighting for the shards of ourselves that refuse to be forgotten. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.